Greetings and welcome to the second podcast for the month of July for Indivisible Fort Bend County. And I have the privilege of being with Marquette Scott Green, who is our District 22 candidate um, for Congress. And this is the second interview that we've had. And I, I think, most people in Indivisible know who you are. So I just have to say that it's this is a long, grueling campaign, and I know that it's easy in looking at these candidates announce, and a lot of people sit there and think, "Ooh, I'd like to do that one day," or "Ooh, shoot, they think they are running for this and that." But when you actually like sit back and I look at your grueling schedule, I'm like, "Oh, I'm not sure about that." But I have to say, like, wow, like what credit you and Lisco must wake up some mornings thinking like, look at yourself in the mirror and rethink like, okay, well, this is my purpose and this is why I'm doing this. I know you do. I know you don't wake up every morning all jolly, happy, boom, boom, boom. Sometimes it's hard, right?
It is. It's very hard. But I would say that 2026 is a little easier than 2024
Okay.
from the standpoint that I have support. I'm trying to build on
People know
what
you.
we did in 2024, but yeah, people know me and they're
Right.
talking about me to other people.
Right.
And so it makes that part a little easier. But yeah, it's a
Right.
lot.
Yeah, I give you credit because I'm just looking. It seems like 7 days a week y'all are running, and I don't know how you do it, but thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing it, and the credit is all yours. And it's our responsibility to keep pushing through with this. So I'm going to start off. Your opponent, Mr. Trevor Nels, I just like to call him the Nels twins, is running largely on an inherited political brand, right, of his twin brother and Troy Nels. So, how do you frame this election maybe not as a family passing of the torch, but as a long overdue opportunity for fresh leadership that actually reflects the diversity, I shall say, diverse families of Fort Bend County and Harris counties? How are you handling that? How are you distinguishing yourself there?
Well, one, I want to say it's not a family business. He is not the heir apparent. This is a seat at the for the people in the people's house, right? The House of Representatives is the people's house. So this is a seat that should be earned and not passed on to the net to your twin brother because you decided it was time to retire. Um I think that CD 22 is one of the most diverse districts in the country, and that's why our campaign reflects its diversity. We have different ethnicities, we have different religions, and it's a tent. And I've always wanted it to reflect what the district itself looks like, because how do we help people if we don't know what their needs are? So that's why I say that this is a campaign that's it's definitely a grassroots campaign that's driven
Right.
by volunteers, and I'm very proud of our campaign because it reflects so many different it reflects the diversity of the district.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what the Republican Party right here in Fort Bend County is lacking that approach. So, okay, let's talk about and you answer one of my questions about the diversity here, but let's talk about some other points here. So, incumbent Nell's office was recently hit with an ethics complaint regarding age discrimination and mistreatment of staff. How does your approach to building a campaign and a future congressional office reflect a fundamental respect for the rights of your workers and the workplace dignity? How would you contrast yourself with Mr. Nels and his brother? I'm gonna call them the twins.
Well, you do know that. Well, I don't know if you know, but much of my campaign is made up of retirees,
Mhm.
right? Because they have the time. I think that everyone should be treated with dignity and respect, and I am an employer. As a city councilwoman, we employ the staff. We have direct supervision over our city manager and our city attorney, but overall, we have to remain conscious of the fact that we are the employers of city staff, and we have to always treat them with dignity and respect. And that's just who I am as a person. And of course, that's who I would be as a congresswoman and as the boss of congressional staff. You hire the best people, and you have to trust that they're going to do their jobs. If they
Mhm.
don't, then you take the steps necessary to
Right.
rectify it. But you always treat people with dignity and respect, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of their ethnicity or their religious backgrounds. Everyone deserves to be treated
Right.
with dignity and
Yeah.
respect.
And I can see that in the way that you deal with your people. I've obviously seen it firsthand. So, okay, here's something that's kind of, you know, just reeks of corruption. So, while you're building this grassroots sort of coalition, your opponent, Mr. Nels, recently was approved for $100,000 taxpayer funding consulting fee as the county chief of staff. He got paid by taxpayers of Fort Bend County, or is getting paid $100,000 by the county. He's chief of staff of. I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say County Judge Wong because he's not, but he's sitting there pretending that he is.
Hmm.
So how does your campaign draw a clear ethical contrast between your vision and this kind of political insider gamesmanship?
I said it was wrong when it happened, when he was appointed. I said it was wrong, and a reporter referenced what was going on in Harris with the DA's office, and I said too. I mean, the county attorney, not the DA, the county attorney's office,
Mhm.
and I said then as well, the Democratic nominee was appointed to be the county attorney, and I said it's not right either way. That's seeking you're receiving an unfair advantage. So not only did they do that, but he appointed someone who's running for Congress as his chief of
Right.
staff, someone who doesn't know what he's doing,
Yeah.
but getting paid a very nice salary.
Yeah.
And you look at it, and I remember one commissioner's court, and Daniel Wong didn't understand the agenda item.
Right.
And that just goes to show you that he has somebody who doesn't understand and doesn't know what's going on. And that's why he didn't know the agenda item. As a councilwoman, I have to come prepared to
Of
council
course.
meeting. That means that if there's something I don't understand, I ask questions ahead of time. I'm not trying to learn on the dais, because it's all about preparation. So if he doesn't know and he's hired someone who doesn't know,
He
this
doesn't
is
know.
this is the what you get. They're just blatantly doing things, and it's basically stop me. That's what
Correct.
they're saying. Stop me.
Yeah. No. Exactly. um, I mean, it's. I think it's part of this sort of MAGA element. It's like kind of in your face. Like, what are you going to do about it? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
the end justifies the means, no matter what. And
Yeah.
I'll be damned, ethics in the way or decency, for people. Um, so, okay. Um, so let's talk about some local issues here. Let's
Okay.
say, let's look at, Medicaid expansion. Obviously, the Republican Party has voted, or Texas has voted against that, leaving hundreds of thousands without care. I mean, there are millions of uninsured Texans. While your opponent supports dismantling federal health care protections. What is your plan to bring universal affordable care directly to working families in our district, or what would you do to work to that in to see that healthcare is more affordable? What would it be what would your power be as a new congresswoman to impact that, and what would you do? How would you proceed with that?
I think the first thing we need to do is reinstate the Affordable Care Act subsidies, because you can't, there are a lot of people who have lost health insurance in the state of Texas. Something like 5.1 million people are uninsured, and of that, like 1 million are children. So we have to shore up the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act.
Mhm.
Then we work on a universal health care plan. I know someone who's a medical doctor, and she decided not to have health insurance for her family this year because it was so
Wow,
expensive. She said
that's
it would, her premium was 24,000 a year, then it went up to
yeah,
28,000 a year. So she's like, it's just
that's
cheaper for
crazy.
us to pay per visit and pray that we don't have a medical
Yeah.
emergency. And that's where a lot of people are in this country right now, and more particularly in this state, because the state of Texas decided not to expand Medicaid. You have
Yeah.
too many companies getting all of these tax breaks, but they're not paying their employees a livable wage. That's why they have to rely on the subsidies of the Affordable Care Act. They have to rely on SNAP. They have to rely
Mhm.
on those social programs because the companies aren't paying them a livable wage.
And,
So I just
right.
think that's what we have to do. We start off by reinstating the subsidies for the Affordable
Yeah.
Care Act so that people can buy or afford insurance, and
Right.
then we come up with a universal
And
health plan.
I think if you have universal health care too, you free up these corporations and businesses from having to pay health care, and then they've got more money in turn to invest and grow their companies and hire more people. I mean, I think it's a win-win situation. But how would we pay for all that? That seems like a lot of money. How would we pay for that? Money's got to come
Well,
from
you just
somewhere.
said one thing, but if we can pay $1 billion a day for a war in another
Oh,
country that there's no end in sight, we don't know what the mission was, we can
right.
afford to pay for universal health care. And it would be cheaper in the long run, like you said, not just for companies, but for states, for
Mhm.
cities. It would be just cheaper all around. And we're paying taxes. I'd rather my taxes go to pay for health care than to go to
Right.
pay for bombs.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah, I think there are so many numbers out there that I've seen. We are taxpayers. We're subsidizing all of this um, in many ways. For example, I mean, the numbers have been out there. I don't know if you recently saw that Amazon, the number just dramatically jumped for the number of Amazon workers who are on Medicaid or SNAP. Those
Mm-hmm.
numbers, those people are taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of those companies, providing something for them, they're basically doing all these stock buybacks, which is just making those that own all those shares, it's making them richer. And of course,
Sure.
owning stock is for everyone. You don't have to be rich or poor, but we know that I think 80% of all stock are owned by a really small percentage of people, and they own a lot of it, right? And that's who and that's pretty telling that these big corporations are earning so much more profits than ever, and their employees are on SNAP and Medicaid. That makes absolutely no sense to me.
or or I mean, and now they're not even qualified for that. So they have to decide if they're going to pay for medication, if they're going to
Correct.
buy food, or if they're going to put
Right.
gas in their car so that they could get to
Exactly.
work. Those are the problems that real people are dealing with, while we have a congressman and his brother who wants to follow in his footsteps, who talking about eating lobster tails and ribeyes. People are
Exactly.
struggling. These are real live
Yeah.
people struggling.
Absolutely. Okay. So moving on to another question here. So let's talk about some of the more progressive nature of, let's say, women's rights. I'm going to go down and let's say with Texas implementing some of the. I'm going to I'm going to give you a question here, then I'm going to add another layer on top of it. So, with Texas implementing some of the absolute strictest abortion bans in the country, how would you champion reproductive freedom to protect women in our district from your opponent's hardline platform? And having said that, can you juxtapose the idea of being pro-choice and being a Christian woman or being a Christian or whatever religious faith you are? Can those two be juxtaposed and can they work together, or are they mutually conflictive? Like a lot of, let's say, evangelical Christians would say those are two. They can't be. They're incompatible. How do you look at those issues?
So let's talk about the first thing. So the
Okay.
first thing, of course, we want to do is codify Roe v. Wade. It's funny how they say that it's states' rights when it comes
Mhm.
to women's reproductive rights, but then
Correct.
when it comes to voting, now the
Oh
federal
yeah.
government
Oh yeah.
wants to be in
Right.
control of us voting when that has always
Right.
been a state's right. So
Right.
we know that they want to pick and choose. I am a Christian, but I do not think that I should impose my beliefs on anyone. We know that abortion care is health care. They would rather keep a woman alive where her body is almost decomposing to carry a child to term. Then they have to take the child. The child now has all these medical conditions.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for it? Because they
Exactly.
don't want us to have they don't want them to have Medicaid. They don't want us to have universal health care. So
Right.
somebody has to take care of that child. They basically kept a woman alive with a machine where her body was almost decomposing before they would
Right.
take that baby away. So make that make sense. It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. None of this makes sense, and they use Christianity as a shield for everything. I'm a Christian, and a lot of what they're doing is not Christ-like. It's
Hmm.
not. And it's not for it, and this was never meant to be a Christian nationalist nation. We
Hmm.
have freedom of religion, which means we
Hmm.
can worship any religion we choose or
Hmm.
none at all. That's what this country was made on, was
Right.
was built on. So that's just a bunch of foolishness talking about I can't so I'm a Christian, so I can't support abortion. Nobody's asking you to have an abortion. All we're doing is saying don't stop somebody else from taking care of her own reproductive rights. That's all we're saying.
Right. Yeah. And the fact is in the state of Texas that a father could rape his 11-year-old daughter, and that 11-year-old daughter would be forced to give birth to that child. Right?
Yeah.
How insane is that? Um, to me, it's like, I was talking to some candidates for the Texas Education Board, and
Hmm.
um, the the idea of putting sort of forcing religion in the schools, biblical texts, Ten Commandments. Nobody's against the message of those, right? But you can't force people to digest that if they're not Christians or whatever. And the other thing is, what it seems like is that it's one of those situations where absolute power, if you keep
Corrupts.
giving an inch, they're going to take a foot. And we already know that to be true because you have to look at the end purpose. The purpose is not just to stop here. Oh, it's historical. The Bible is part of history. No, their purpose is literally, as Dan Patrick said, that there is no separation of church and state. And that's what their end game is, right? He literally said that, right?
Well, we know there's a separation of church and state. The Bible
Of
even
course.
says, it says, "Give to Caesar what is his." That means that they understood that the government was the government and church was church. That was the
Right.
separation of church and state.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so let's take a look here at so you answered the question about diversity. Um, so if you are elected, let's hope that you're elected. We're pushing
Let's
for
say
that.
when I'm elected.
Exactly. So what is the first what's first on your agenda? Let's say you arrive to DC, you get inducted. I mean, what's your first things on your agenda? One, two, three, or first thing, however you want to say.
Well,
What is the
one
priority that you're going to go after?
priority for me is affordability. You start with affordability by dealing with those tariffs and this war.
Mhm.
That's how you start with affordability. The second thing would be universal healthcare. Finding our
Mhm.
way to universal healthcare. Of course, like I said, re we would reinstate the Affordable Care Act subsidies while we work on
Mhm.
a universal health care plan. And then saving our democracy. We need to put some safeguards in place to keep this man from doing all the things that he's doing and keep any other president who
Right.
comes along from doing it. The founders thought that by having three co-equal branches that there would be checks and balances.
Yeah.
Each branch would keep the other one in
Right.
check. Well, we see that the Supreme Court and Congress have not, or the legislative branch, they have not stepped up, and they basically acquiesced, giving him all of their authority, and we need to put some safeguards in place. So those three plus voting rights. That's my four.
Right. Okay.
Reproductive rights is very important, but right now we have so many other things going on that it can't be my top four. Probably top five,
Right.
maybe top
Yeah. I,
four.
I
'Cause
think
we
yeah.
just got too much
I
going
think
on.
affordability is boy. That's affordability in healthcare right now are got to be the top. They've got to be up there at the top.
Yes.
So I have a couple more questions here for you. So what is the most, I mean, you're going around and you're talking to people. What is the I don't know, what's the most important issue that you're hearing from people as you're out campaigning? What are they telling you? Like, we need to do this, we need to do that. What do you think about this? Can we fix that? What are you hearing out there? What's the top issue or issues there?
Democracy.
Okay.
That's number one, saving our
Okay.
democracy.
Okay.
Because people are upset that, they're not doing anything. So that's number one.
Now,
And
when
of
you
course,
say saving democracy,
affordability.
you're talking about the voting rights and this voting law that Congress
No,
is
I'm
trying to
I'm
get
talking
passed
about
too.
I'm talking about stopping this man.
Oh yeah, okay, gotcha.
Stopping the president from just doing everything. He's doing many illegal things. He's
Yeah,
basically legislating via executive order. So
right.
we as a Congress need to take that power back. Put
Absolutely.
safeguards in place. That's how you save our democracy. Of
Right.
course, voting rights is another thing because he's coming after our voting rights.
Well, that
So
SAVE Act
all
is
of those
precisely.
things, yeah, all
Mhm.
of those things kind of work together.
Right. Yeah,
The
absolutely.
Save Act.
Well, that SAVE Act is scary because, in my mind, if they decided to overturn the filibuster and get that, shove that down the shove that down our throat. Am I referring to that right? The filibuster, where you got to have a 60-40, when you got to have 60 votes
That's
to.
yeah.
I think that's what I'm talking about. So,
I know what you're talking about.
yes. So if they get rid of that and they shove this down with just the requirement of a single vote majority, that SAVE Act, um, I will tell you that all hell will break loose if Democrats get back in power, and they should do the same thing and more, because that would be the worst violation that I could ever see done in the history of our Congress bar, going back Civil War times, etc. But that would mean war. Wouldn't you think so? If they
Yeah,
overturn that,
and I
because they
think
won't get it up for discussion because of that 60-40 rule. But if they overturn that, Trump's trying to get Senator Thune to do that. And if they did that, I will tell you that, in my opinion, it's all guns,
Well, that's
blazing,
the thing. I
figuratively
think that's
speaking.
the only thing that'll keep them from doing it because they know Democrats are going to eventually come back into power. And if those safeguards aren't in place, then they're going
Yeah.
to get some good stuff
Fortunately,
passed for American people, but that's not
yeah.
what they want. So I think
Fortunately,
that's
you
the
have
only
kind of
thing.
a sane senator who is the majority leader who's seeing that that check is in place. And what's really important, we always take for granted that, oh, our democracy is just so great and it just takes care of itself. But it literally takes virtuous people to keep those rigid structures into place, right? And as
Yeah.
we've seen, it almost fell apart and is almost falling apart. And we've got to rebuild those guardrails. I think that you're onto something with all that, right?
Yeah. Well, the problem is there weren't any guardrails. They were just customary. These things were customary because you had people who had some kind of morals. Even
Right.
Richard Nixon had morals, right?
Yeah.
But now you have someone who doesn't, and all he cares
Right.
about is making money and
Right.
billions of dollars for
Yeah.
himself and his family and his supporters.
Right.
So we have our first trillionaire,
That
so you
that
don't
is
have,
mm,
yeah, you don't have moral people right now.
right.
And so that's why the safeguards have to be put in place. We can't rely on tradition anymore. We have to basically codify it.
Right.
Just like
And
now he's talking about running for a third term. No, he's not
yeah.
joking. He
Oh,
means that. They try to say,
that
oh, he's just joking. He's not joking.
he'll probably
Mm-mm.
fall over from all that Big Macs and stuff that he eats at McDonald's before the conference. Anyway,
I'm not
yeah,
laughing at that.
I know. I mean, neither. I'm not laughing either. But and I'm gonna get to my last point here, but it is really disturbing to me the fact that we have a trillionaire. That should never that should never exist, and that speaks to our tax system being so jaded because that group of people, they don't pay taxes, right? They just borrow against their assets, their stock portfolios, which is a whole nother topic. But I've been doing a lot of research into some a French economist that I'm looking at who's really has great ideas about that, and I'm that's a whole nother issue. But that really is disturbing, and that tax code needs to be really dealt with so that those people can pay a little bit of their fair share portion of that. And we're not even talking
Mm.
about income tax because they always point out, well, the top 1% pays 40% of all taxes. That's true, but that's income tax, right? And what we're talking about is a whole different ball game that the super rich, they don't pay income tax. Income tax is for suckers, as one of those guys said, right? They don't pay that. That's a different topic.
Donald Trump, probably.
Well, he's part of it because he doesn't have to pay income. That didn't pay any income. Well, he controls the IRS too, doesn't he? So last point here, or last question. Um, so what is? And let me take a look back at my note here. Okay, what is the? I know it's challenging. I know that some mornings you get up, but what is the most satisfying part to you, because there are no guarantees in this business, but you have to get up every day, give all of your energy, active, and like every other political candidate, it never stops. And our system goes on and on for over a year or whatever it is. Like
Mhm.
it's exhausting. But given having said all that, you got your inspiration and you keep reaffirming and you keep doing it. But what is the most satisfying thing? What's the most satisfying thing to you about doing this? Because there has to be some level of satisfaction that you're doing something good, that you're doing, what gives you satisfaction? What's the most satisfying thing for you?
Two, my
Okay.
supporters,
Okay.
because I have some very dedicated
Hmm.
volunteers. So they keep me going for sure. And
Hmm.
then just talking to voters, talking to people, listening to them talk about what their concerns are, and just
Hmm.
knowing that I have all these qualifications and to whom much is, the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is expected. And
Sure.
so I just want to pay it forward for all my blessings and things, people who have looked out for me, and I want to look out for somebody else. So that's what keeps me going. I'm kind of selfish because I love doing for people.
Hmm.
So that's where I get everything. I get
Yeah.
the the will to keep going,
Yeah.
the satisfaction, because I
Right.
know I'm trying to do right. And so it makes it easier for me to keep
Yeah.
pushing forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You're doing a great job. I can't keep up with you. I mean, I'm looking at every day all these posts, and I think a couple days ago, were you dressed up like Madonna or something at some party, somebody's party? Yeah, go figure that one, huh?
But I said Madonna,
There you
and
go.
then one of the judges said, I think that's better. I said, yeah. So either one.
Yeah,
That was the
yeah.
80s. That's how they dressed.
I know.
That's how
Yeah,
we dressed in the 80s.
that was funny. I enjoyed looking at all those pics of y'all crazy ladies
Oh,
doing
we
that.
had some
I know
fun.
you did.
That
I
was
can tell.
fun.
I can
Yeah.
tell. Well, okay. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here again. And keep it up, and let's do it again. We got how many more months left before the elections? 3 months?
We're inside 100 days. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we'll do
Yeah.
it again. And again, thanks for the interview, and I hope that you have a wonderful continued effort of campaigning.
Thank you. And I appreciate you taking the time to
Yeah.
interview me
Yep.
this
Take care.
second time.
I know. I know. We'll do it again. Thank you.
Okay.